Welcome back to another episode of Thinksipwrite. I'm Rick Pepito, and I apologize if you've been waiting for next episode. It's been a couple days. I've been in the final stages of the first draft of my next novel, Devoured Universe. So to celebrate getting the novel into the editor, Homemade Delish made me a cucumber mint gin martini. It's really excellent. This episode, I decided to talk about how we got into publishing, how we got into script comics. So when I released my first novel, Fkesh and Leftovers, I got a lot of fan email saying, okay, so when are you doing more zombies? And I wasn't ready for that. I didn't want to do anything the same twice. I apologize for the lighting because it's all over the place. But I was working on my second novel, which involved vampires, but I was getting all this feedback about the first one. So I reached out to my brother, who is an amazing artist. I've mentioned it before. He's done all the cover art for my books. And I said, hey, people are in demand of expansions of these stories. They want more of these zombie stories. And I didn't want to do another whole novel on zombies. I feel like it's been overdone. The market started to get saturated. And, you know, the book came out right before The Walking Dead came out. The comic was obviously out, but it kind of gave me an idea of, all right, well, let's turn this into something. And he came up with the idea of working with other artists. It was too much for the two of us to handle alone. And basically what we did was I wrote 10 more stories based on the plot lines that happened in the book. So they were either expansions. It might be prequels to the characters, or it might be expansions on what happened afterwards, or something entirely different with other characters that related to those incidents, maybe somewhere else in the town. So Dan said to me he couldn't do it by himself, and we decided that we were going to work with other artists. And I said, okay, so let's start this like a comic company, kind of. He came up with the logo, and we decided to call it sCrypt Comics, which is now sCrypt Publishing because we do more than just the comics. And at the end of this episode, I'm going to put a slideshow up of some of the samples of the art in the comics, and I'll actually put the artist's contact information in there, their Twitter handles or whatever, so that if you're interested in working with them or looking for a good artist, they're amazing people to work with. We hit some bumps along the road. You get that with working with any amount of people, but we basically put this ad out on Craigslist for the first one. And it worked really well, surprisingly. 9 out of the 10 artists that were working with us on it, that we actually chose, came through. And at the time, we did not have a budget on us. It was basically, work for reputation. We spread the word, and we do what we can. And actually, on my website at scriptcomics.com, there is an Artist of the Month section. I highly recommend checking it out. There's more expansions on what they've done there, so it'll be way more than what the slideshow is going to show you. But we did the spinoff of Fkesh and Leftovers. We decided after the second novel we're going to do it again, and it worked. Where Dan was the art director, I wrote the stories, I drew storyboards. Now, I am not art inclined at all. My brother got all the art talent in the family. So these artists who are professional artists were getting stick figures, and they're terrible. I can't even tell you a fourth grader, I'm giving that a lot of credit, a second grader could draw a lot better than I can. So these artists were working with storyboards that were really horribly done. But it got the point across. The figures were in there. I might even put one of them in the slideshow, but you can see some of them on the website as well. So after the first one was a success, we decided to do it for the next couple novels. And when the first 3 novels came out and I released the trilogy, I actually novelized the comic stories and put them in the trilogy, because a lot of people were reading the books and they wanted the whole stories, and those were accessory type things that weren't necessary to the main plot, but were kind of cool to have in there. So they're actually bonus content if you're not really into comics and you kind of want to check out the stories themselves. They are in the collections of each of them. Right now, I have one comic written for each of the novels I've done. And we're working on doing a lot more, but we kind of had to shift directions a little bit because it was so time consuming. Dan had so many art projects and he was getting pulled aside for doing different commissions here and there, and I was doing the other novels. So we kind of took a backseat to that. It's very hard organizing everything, and we are planning on doing it again right now. You know, we decided to make it sCrypt publishing instead because we've ventured into audiobooks and children's books now, and we're doing all that. But the process to making a comic is very, very involved. So, you know, with something like Marvel or DC or Image, the big comic book companies, they have so many artists working on these things, so many writers working on these things. What we were doing was I would give this storyboard that would have very few frames. There were maybe 7 pages to each story. And basically each comic was responsible for everything on the 7 pages. But I gave them free roam to do what they wanted. So some artists decided to just do the pencil. Some decided to do the ink, color, and everything. And everything that has come out of it has made us extremely happy. I even had one artist who was doing a story about children, and it was a horror story, but the children's story was actually done in crayon, and I thought that was kind of cool. He did crayon and he cut out each of the pages and kind of pasted them on a bigger page to make it look like an art project. There was a lot of creativity that went into everything, and it was a fun time doing it, and we do plan on doing it more. We're always looking for artists, and you know, if you're interested in doing art with us, feel free to shoot me a line. After the artists were getting the storyboards, and the storyboards had the drawings and the text with it, and I had specific emotions written down that I wanted each of them to do, and the dialogue, and they would come back to me with a rough sketch. They'd send it to me, I'd see each stage of it and give approval or not approval, and 9 times out of 10 it was approval. If the artist is happy with their own work, then I'm happy with it. You know, now there were a couple times where we did have to tell them, no, we can't do this, or we got to do something different, but pretty much the sky was the limit. We decided to do sCrypt because we wanted it to be more adult and horror oriented with adult content in it, but not pushing it too much. Unfortunately, we ran into a complication here and there where Dan had to pick up the slack and do extra artwork, but Dan's always, you know, he's pretty much the other half of what I've been doing. So if you want to find out more about what we're doing, visit us. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, do all that fun, neat things here and there. And feel free to comment below, send me a message. Enjoy the rest of the episode.